Hey everybody, welcome to this week's episode of Pensado's Place. In just a second, meet a very busy guy. He's president of AES, he's an executive at iZotope, and he teaches at Berklee. You're going to meet Jonathan Weiner, a very bright man. But first, boy, is there a lot going on. We've got Summer NAMM. We're actually back. Details coming to you shortly, but it's going to take place in Nashville. You get to see people in person. Our guys at 1500 Sound Academy, they have a full list of free virtual workshops they're offering that you should take. Head over to 1500 Sound Academy to register. The next one is all about artist branding and all you guys want to know about how to brand yourself. Now you can go learn for free. Well, you've heard about a hot boy summer, a hot girl summer. How about a hot product summer? For instance, Arturia, a brand new plugin. Dave is messing with it now. He's going to give you a report, but so far he really thinks it's hot as fire. Same thing for our boys in Nashville, John McBride. He's got a plugin coming from the infamous Blackbird Studio, modeled on things in Blackbird Studio, doing this with their partner company, Kit. He's going to come on and share it. And a lot more coming down the pike that we want you to benefit from and be able to utilize and improve your game. Hit us on all of our socials. We'll get back to you. We're going to have a lot of stuff going on, and sweepstakes and trips and all kinds of stuff. And now, without further ado, meet Jonathan Weiner. Jonathan, how are you, man?
I'm very well. Hey, Dave and Herb, it's so good to see you.
Absolutely. One of our favorite times was a couple years ago when you could do live stuff. Hopefully that's coming back. We came to Cambridge and we spent time and we shot in a room that you've worked and in a building that you know well. And I literally, and I don't want to over-exaggerate, I left and I thought I was smarter just from being in Cambridge.
That's why I stay in Cambridge. When I leave, suddenly all of my intelligence leaves my body. It's like this weird sort of thing
weird,
that happens there.
But
yes.
I'm way overdue a thing back because I'm feeling like I'm slipping.
You need to come back. You need to come
absolutely.
back.
You know what? From a granular level, and I do want to talk about your career too, but I find that AES is doing really interesting things. And sometimes it's about more people knowing, and I hope that's a result of this. Give me the granular level of what AES is, what the mission statement is, and who it appeals to.
Oh boy, it's hard to fit that all into a succinct answer. You know, the Audio Engineering Society is a global organization focused on all things audio, and we're 73 years in. Wow. To history that includes people who are, practitioners, the people who make recordings, the people who design and manufacture equipment, people who do research that turns into the equipment that you're going to be using 5 years from now or 5 weeks from now, as the case is these days. People who are involved in thought leadership on every level, educators like crazy. We have technical committees. We drive some standards around audio. Everybody's using AES cable, right? Whether it's AES 3 or AES 67. And so it's kind of pervasive when it comes to audio. There's sort of something for everyone in every corner of AES. So in some ways I think it's like the Hanging Gardens of Babylon of audio, right? It's not just one sort of discipline, but it's a place of intersection.
I think that people don't realize the work you guys do as an entity with standards. So if you want to know why your CD is 1644, ask Jonathan, because he's one of the people that probably set that standard.
Now that's not my fault, that one.
Yeah, I know you guys wanted more. Man, there's something kind of organic in every man with 2416. It's become a standard, really. As you know.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, there was a technical reason at the time, but you're right, Dave. the sort of notion of standards, trying to come up with a standard that serves the purposes and the needs of the creative, the production community, and consumers. Somebody's got to be working on behalf of all those groups, all those constituents. And so AES is a place where that work does happen.
But you're my friend, so I'm proud to say that. But stop with this loudness shit. I like to be loud. Stop doing that.
Oh, now wait a minute. Now hang on a second.
Okay.
I mean, I'm with you. Let me just start by saying I agree with you in the sense that I don't think we're the ones that get to decide how something gets listened to. Uh-huh. I think that coming up with recommendations for distribution standards to consumers, which ultimately may turn into an influence on the production side of things, is a place that it's right for us to be participating in this. Yeah. I am not one of those people personally. I'm going to speak personally. I don't want to try to speak for the entirety of the AES community or anybody else. Mm-hmm. But I think far be it from us to tell people what level they should set their music to. Mm-hmm. I mean, I just don't think that makes any sense. I think they're creative decisions.
Yeah. I was kind of half teasing you, though. You know what I'm saying.
Well, I know, but it's actually a fascinating conversation. We could spend a long time just talking about this, but we're about to come out with a revision to the recommendations for standards.
Oh, wow.
Which incorporates the idea of, you're familiar with loudness normalization, which more and more of the streaming services are using. Yeah. And Spotify has now gone over to LUFS. When you install Spotify, like loudness norm is turned on by default. Same with the Apple Music platform. And I think you see greater and greater adoption. So the new recommendations include something, the idea of album normalization, for instance. So let's say you make a 12-song record and the fourth track is the one that's, when you produce the record and you master it, it's supposed to be a little hotter. The streaming services will actually keep track of that. So if you listen to the whole record, that's the one that'll play a little hotter. Or if you even listen to it as a single, it'll play a little hotter. So we're not thinking about loudness in some kind of single dimensional way. It really needs to be connected to the listener experience and the artistic idea, ideally at the same time.
I'm a bit of a neophyte in this area. Does it take up more bandwidth to broadcast louder?
No, it does not. You have a fixed amount of bandwidth. In fact, you could argue that it takes more bandwidth to accommodate a wider dynamic range.
Oh, okay.
And so if you want to give people a shot at hearing low-level signals, if they're listening on a cell phone, and they don't have 4 bars, right, on their phone. It's sort of the same with radio, right? When you wander far enough from the transmitter, at some point your FM signal might default to mono because that's the only way you're actually going to hear the music or hear the signal that you're listening to. So there's a similarity there.
So, Jonathan, loosely connected, and because of your expertise, give us your sense of the state of mastering today and where it's going.
Yeah,
that's a big question too. I think we're seeing an acceleration of the trend that you might sort of loosely call the democratization of audio. There is so much access to the tools. There's so many different venues and avenues for distribution, and it feels like it's an ever-expanding universe of options for artists to try to connect with audiences. Mm-hmm. And, I think we'll probably see an increasing development around multi-channel audio and so on. So there are lots of different sort of situations to think about when you're mastering and outcomes. And so I think mastering gets a little bit more complicated and a little bit more varied, and there are more people doing it. And I will tell you something else that I've noticed, and that is people are way more sophisticated now, understanding mastering than they were when I started teaching, especially teaching online, some, whatever it was, 10 years ago. the very sort of basic information was a revelation to most people. Nowadays, I feel like the general knowledge base has really leveled up. And in my classes, we're having much more interesting and advanced conversations in week 1 than maybe we used to have in week 10.
Wow.
So, there's still a lot of people sort of getting started, but it feels like it's a very expansive moment.
Any sense of the artificial intelligence kind of services where you can go online and pick different things? What's your take on that?
I think right now there are 18 online platforms that offer some sort of automated, machine learning driven mastering. And I think in certain situations, it's a valuable resource to people. If you need to provide a track for a place that, to be considered for placement in a TV program or something like that, where you just need to make sure that it's going to fit the bill.
Yeah.
It's going to be hot enough, the tonal balance is going to be good enough in that context. It's not a bad thing. It can be very, very helpful. I also think that for some people who are just starting out, you can learn something by using these services. If you take your mixes and you upload your mix to one of these services and get it back and look at what's changed, it might give you some insight into what could happen.
I'll tell you a funny, Talisha can confirm this. We were having lunch and we recommended to our sushi waiter, who was a musician, and every time I go in, we have to have discussions about stuff, and he's going to spend all this money on what he's going to do, and we said, go try this first, see what he was flabbergasted it was even available. And also for our show, there's no bigger feedback, more reactive and sometimes angry crowd than the mastering crowd. If there's something we do that they disagree with, we get it in bucket loads. So the mastering folks are quite passionate about it. And when you think about all the sectors we talk to, nobody is more vociferous than your brethren. So.
I understand it very well, and I think I'm going to sort of be generous in my interpretation of that by saying the following. I think that a lot of what you get when you get that pushback is people obviously are, worried about the robots are coming to take our jobs and so on and so forth. But I think really what's at the bottom of it is holding the line in defense of the artistic idea.
Yeah, absolutely. Right.
In consideration of the artistic genius and the creativity that is infusing a mix that comes and hits our desk, and then we have to try to understand it and make our decisions that suit the artistry, bring to bear our own artistic sort of interpretation and decisions. That's something that machines have a really hard time with. And I think to expect, an automated service to do that doesn't make any sense. So I think when you break it down, I think anybody understands that being able to spruce up a demo to get it out the door, you're not going to pay a mastering engineer to do that. An automated service is good for that. But when it comes time to, does the chorus need to be a little hotter than the verse? Does the Billie Eilish record really need all that low end? An automated service would say no, but man, tell me that was not a successful record the way it came out. And that decision was made by a human.
Right.
So, I think that's really where it comes from.
And I love it. I like that people are passionate about what they care. I don't like people that aren't passionate. This is you got to commit to something. Yeah.
But I'm not scared. I'm with you, and I'm not scared. I'm intrigued, and I love technology and what it gives us, the new possibilities. So.
Yep.
I think an often overlooked part of mastering is befriending your mastering engineer and get a relationship with them. There's two people that I probably wouldn't exist if I didn't know these two people. The mastering engineer, Eddie Schreier over at Futuredisc, and of course Herb. But Eddie used to call me and say, "Hey, so-and-so just gave me this song. I want you to listen to it because he's killing you, and this is where you can improve, and this is this. And by the way, I'm getting too much 800 from you. And so he said, so you're not hearing enough in the rooms you're working in, and that I learned a lot from Eddie, and bless his heart, he's a sweet human being. But I think having a relationship is the new way to do with your mastering engineer, and I've never had a mastering engineer not willing to help. That was a double negative, but.
Well, no, I love that, Dave, and I think it says a lot about you that you're open to sort of understanding and improving yourself. And frankly, I think mastering engineers learn from mixing engineers too. When a mixing engineer gives you something, and you sort of want to understand why they did what they did and where they're headed with it, and it opens up new possibilities for you as a mastering engineer. I was just having this conversation. I was working on a record for an artist named Danilo Perez the other day, and I was talking, actually Rob Jasko, the chair of the MP&E department, mixed the record. And we had some really great back and forth. It's an amazing, interesting record. And we were just enjoying the fact that we could have this exchange of ideas, an honest exchange. We disagreed about a couple of things and agreed about a whole lot more. And I think we both felt like we came out of the gig understanding better and having gotten something from each other and from that relationship.
Yeah.
Can I go back to something on I'm sorry, Dave, to go back to something on the AES that I think is super cool. The audio topics portal is such a convenient way to get a snapshot and some information on a whole host of topics from pros in an efficient, quick way. It's as well done as, and for me, I always get to look at things in the audio space with 1 foot in and 1 foot out. And so the foot that's out, when it gets drawn in, I know that it's being fed to me properly. So I just kudos to not only you guys, but also our audience. If you go to the AES website, aes.org, and you just click through, when you get to topics, man, you can find so many things from somebody who definitely knows what they're talking about and get that information in and out. It's really well done, Jonathan.
Well, thank you. And I gotta, we have to acknowledge the community. And also, I mean, we've got an amazing staff, and Colleen Harper, our executive director, is just an amazing leader for the organization. But we would be nothing without the community.
As us, we go as well, and then you also do stuff like audio for automobiles and things that you just go. You do student mix critiques and really cool stuff.
That's coming up. We actually, last year also, we started this thing called the APEI, the Audio Product Education Institute, which is some really deep dives into learning about how products are made and all of the issues associated with it, whether it's physical products, dealing with, manufacturing and supply chain, like things that most people don't even think about, to some of the sort of under the hood technologies like machine learning in developing audio products and so on. So that's some pretty serious education that's being offered there. So that's a really exciting new effort for us.
And then you did some EDM stuff.
Yes.
Didn't you?
Yep.
Yeah.
We've got a really cool modern music production event coming up at the beginning of July. We haven't announced it yet, so you heard it here first. Paul Womack is curating that. I don't know if you know Paul, but he's a wonderful producer and now leader in the community based in Brooklyn. He goes by the stage name Willie Green as an artist.
Is he a brother?
Oh, yeah.
Because you can't, if you're going to sport Willie Green, you got to have some brown. So
yeah, no, Paul's. I will also say Paul is a mensch. He's like one of the. I just love working with him. He's been an incredible collaborator.
Oh, that's fabulous.
He actually led our hip hop and modern R&B track the last couple of years for our fall show. So we've got that coming. We've got some other events coming at the end of the year that I'm not going to talk about out loud yet, so watch this space. But
not yet. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, we're really close.
Be brutal, please. What's the difference between the way I hear a piece of music and mix it and between what you hear when you're mastering? It's always confused me because, and I'm going to insult you, but this is out of respect, but mastering engineers usually don't make great mixers, and mixing engineers are horrible at mastering. So what is the delineation, and can you describe that quickly in terms of how you hear? Like, I listen for the trees, but you listen for the forest.
That's the convenient answer, but I don't totally buy that. Here's what I think it is, Dave. I think in the course of 1,000 working hours, you're spending 999 of them mixing, and I'm spending 999 of them mastering. So wouldn't you be better at the thing that you do most, and wouldn't I be better at the thing that I do? I mean, I think one could argue that it's about practice. Yeah. I used to mix records, and I actually got pretty good at it, but I stopped doing it as the majority of my work a long time ago. So when I listen to a record that you mix, you've poured your heart and soul and made all of these decisions that you've made to create this sonic image. Now it's my chance to hear it for the first time, so I get to represent the listening audience from the perspective of all of the records that I've listened to and offer some suggestions. But, I don't think you're any better or worse at listening than I am. I think you're better at mixing. And I think you're you. I mean, you've got your way of putting it together, right? So,
yeah.
But that's really the way I feel about it. I think you probably, you hear people talking about mixing and, take it out to the car, listen on your earbuds to make sure it translates, right? I mean, that's translation is part of what mastering is about. So it's not like it's a foreign concept to you. Yeah. You're still thinking about the forest, but that's not the majority of your focus. So that's my take on it. Okay.
Yeah, great answer.
Well, it's the Malcolm Gladwell concept.
Yeah, I think that's really true. I mean, I was lucky. I was cursed in that I got to practice mastering, and get paid to do it. Mm-hmm. So I got to get that over that 10,000 hour hump. Mm-hmm. And I don't think I'm an especially fast learner. So I think that if anybody spends 10,000 hours mastering records, they will get pretty good at it. Mm-hmm. I really believe that.
Mm-hmm. One of the things we've talked about off camera because of both of what we do and something I'm putting together is, and I think is necessary for the audio business, is the whole notion of DEI.
Yes.
A lot of people, because it's such an insular business, would have no idea, and one, how skewed it is, depending on where you're talking about, and it's a community-based place, so sometimes problems can be systemic and not raise their head properly until somebody says. So for AES, and I know for you personally, is DEI something you're looking at seriously wanting to address?
I don't think there's a choice, Herb. I think for so many reasons, not only is it the right thing to do, not as a way of sort of looking at ourselves and our biases and how we build community, raising up the entire community, seeing where there's friction for those who are underrepresented, shining a light where there are people who are not seen. But there's an air of inevitability about it. I'm going to say something that I probably shouldn't, but I'm going to say it anyway.
Please do.
There are people in the world who seem to think that maintaining a status quo that existed in the past, let me use the sort of father knows best, 1950s white American family, and that somehow represented a norm or normalcy, and that even that ever existed, that we should try to maintain that. When the fact of the matter is, if you look across the population, that is not who we are.
That's right.
That is not how, what we look like. Yep. The values that are portrayed there, some of them are admirable values around, sort of commitment to each other and whatever. That's, we can all embrace those ideas, but that's not who we are. And if we pretend that's who we are, we just are going to miss each other.
Yep.
And if you look at the demographics, certainly in the U.S., you're seeing that it's maybe 20 years, I think the majority will be non-Anglo in this country. It's just statistically true. So to try to hold on to something that flies in the face of reality is crazy. And there's an existential problem with it. It's like, this just won't work, and you will simply fade into irrelevancy. It's kind of, I'll use another bad analogy. It's like if you said, well, the only way to make records is to use tape.
Right.
I mean, at some point, it's going to be hard to find tape and tape machines. It already is.
That's right.
Right? And so that status quo doesn't really make sense. And so, anyway, so yes, it's incredibly important. I think it's beyond important. I think it's just an essential part of the work that we need to do. We at AES, we got a lot of work to do to make sure that there is representation across our membership that really reflects the diversity in the community on every level. And we're starting to dig in, and it's a long road, just like it is for cultures and society.
Yeah.
And we're starting with things like even measurement. Like if we can't figure out who we are and how we identify, it's hard to even know what the issue is and to track progress.
That's right.
So there's, please interrupt me. I mean, there's a lot. I could go on.
No, it's a very important subject.
What's beautiful about as you know what's going on, and I'm chairing up a committee, I call it a task force, kind of, to be able to make it easier for organizations like yours and other organizations that are governing organizations in our business to get involved. And one of the things that we're going to show people is that it is a bottom line dollar thing as well, too. It's not just about you doing the right thing. It's that you will make more money if you pay attention to this. And we are putting together measuring interfaces and other kinds of things to make it easy to join up and then see the advantages of it and stop making everything such a decision between good and bad, between, like, it's so freighted with weight that we have to sort of say, yes, it is, but that's not what we're focusing on.
I think I love what you're saying, Herb, and I'm so excited that you're doing this for the industry. I think one of the things that you're calling out is that people worry that unless they seem completely altruistic in undertaking this work, that somehow it lessens the importance of it.
Right.
And the reason that I think I'm saying it's inevitable and calling out the fact that, I mean, there are people in the world in every community who want to be producing records and are producing records. And if you don't do this work, you're missing your audience. So, 100%. I mean, it's like, it's kind of a no-brainer, isn't it, your idea to address your audience? So,
it's kind of basic.
It is kind of basic.
Yeah.
So that's my thinking about that.
And we have a chance to lead. And I'll get off this topic, but music and the arts, and particularly, I was having a conversation. Who was it with yesterday? It was actually a venture capitalist who's in the audio education side. And I was talking to him, and it's a huge funds, over $1 billion. And I said, audio is the one discipline in everything. And he just stopped. He said, God, I've never thought about it that way. And I was like, yeah, we're the indispensable people. And we just don't sometimes believe it ourselves.
Right.
And so when you understand that and you realize that the same tools that Jonathan teaches at Berklee, or we teach on Pensado's Place, whatever the case may be, that could be used in forensics, and that can be used in the military, and that can be used in gaming. And you have a lot of power. Try to have an Oscar-winning movie with no sound or bad sound. not going to happen. Yeah. So it's fun to be able to say to people, wait, understand. Sometimes you can be so steep in something you don't understand it. Mm-hmm. And it takes kind of a third eye to say, wait, here's your power, here's your opportunity, here's what can happen, here's what's inevitable, here's how to stay ahead of it. So the good news as we get back to it is that the initial reach outs partners want to partner and move into this. So I'm really pleased about that and appreciate you for that. Given that, what is your take? Because you're, besides being just an audio badass and also being an educator and being a very smart man, I love that you look at our business through calm eyes. Once we get a little bit older, we get a chance to have reflection and some perspective and so on and so forth. What do you feel about the music scene and where it's going?
I think from the creative side, it's really exciting and really interesting. I mean, I've heard records that blow my mind. I remember some of the records that I found inspiring in the 1970s, right, in 1980s that were experimental sort of, like ways of putting music together we'd never heard before. The records that are being made now make those records sound amateurish. Mm-hmm. I mean, there's a lot of really interesting music going on. But, you can talk about the Hot 100, and that's something totally different from talking about what's going on SoundCloud or, on different channels. So if that's what you mean by music scene, it's really cool. It's really, really cool. Mm-hmm. The only thing that makes me worried, and this is maybe a little bit of ignorance, because it's not something I have to deal with all the time, is I worry about how artists make money. And earn a living, and musicians being able to sort of to continue to be able to sort of invest and reinvest in their art, which is hard enough just in and of itself without having to do all of the things you need to do just to put food on the table. And that's something that feels like it's been eroding. I mean, there are opportunities, and some of them include new technologies. Blockchain has some interesting applications for connecting artists not only to audiences but also to royalties. Mm-hmm. But the technology won't solve the issue. I think there's some underlying sort of ways of sort of owning the distribution channels and sort of making sure that we can assert the value of what has been created and the access to it. And that feels like the biggest challenge that we've got right now.
One of the dangers of commoditization is it flattens things. And, I'm always railing about, probably to my dog, because who cares what I think, but I'm always railing about there's so many choices that we're getting swamped. Like, how do I curate music? How do I find what's out there? It's coming at me every way. And not everybody, some people have to work and they don't have time to sit and go through whatever they like. And then you see royalties getting flattened and more ways I'm on the board of 3 separate companies that are all really record companies in your pocket. Like, you can do things on an app and you can store stuff and you can collaborate and you can have a vault and you can, but when it's commoditized, when everybody can do it, we recently interviewed Immediate Family, which is made up of The Section plus a couple of people. And so those are classic guys, and they put out new music. And we were talking about the difference between when they were coming up and we were all coming up, a few people got through the portal and you were kind of touched by God and you got a chance to do this music thing and you benefited from it. Now, everybody can take the technology, and not everybody should have the right to do it, but not everybody's gifted enough to do something, but they all can put it out. They all can do stuff, and it becomes, it can become tougher. I think when you're in the middle of an industrial evolution that never stops evolving, we're just going to have to learn how to figure that out, because when musicians can't get paid well, then peripheral people who work with them can't get paid well.
Yeah, well said. I mean, there's always been a peripheral economy, where people have given music lessons or have been copyists and arrangers and done, writing for commercial music and so on. So, but again, I think some of my comments, and I'll own this, I'm not an expert in this area.
Right.
And so I'm talking about the things that I worry about on behalf of my clients that I don't know very much about. So,
I got you. Yeah. Your worry is other people's textbook to go study from. So keep worrying, brother. Please do.
I hate to interject in this conversation because I'm the weak mind and part of this, but I think the way to start possibly, and here I'm backtracking a little bit, is to go back to having a council on the arts where you can receive money, like Canada supports its artists, and they think they make money by doing that. But the thing that I think is absolutely important is to start teaching music in school. My mother was a great teacher, but I learned a lot from band playing in school bands. I learned a lot from getting taught how to read music, and it was fun, you know. It was like recess, really. And so when you teach music that young, not only do you create more creative creators, but you also create a better audience because they're sophisticated, so they can enjoy a jazz piece as well as a classical piece as well as Billie Eilish. And so we need to create an audience through schools, and we need to create creators through schools. And I don't think it's not a big deal. It doesn't take much. You can get some free horns from Yamaha, and you can get some folding chairs and a talented person to lead it all. And you got school, and maybe you can do it after school.
You know, Dave, I love that, and I'll tell you just a quick recounting of a study that we did at Berklee that was done in the music business department, where they decided to survey a bunch of graduates who went on to do things that were not music related. And these were people who were in business, involved in medicine. There was a guy who ran an insurance sales company, for instance. And, you know, the question was asked genuinely, you know, why'd you go to Berklee and what'd you get out of it? And was there anything about the experience of being involved in learning about music or in music education that benefited you beyond the obvious things we hear about how it's good for your brain, you know, and to a person? They all said it was their ability to navigate dealing with diverse people who they'd never met before, building relationships and communication skills. And when you're working in a band, you know, or you're playing in a band with a whole bunch of people, you have to learn how to communicate and how to get along and how to get to the last measure at the same time. You know, and it was really, really powerful to understand that was one of the most important learning outcomes. And sort of focusing on collaboration is just so important.
Our business, even when you're an individual, is a team sport. You can be a solo artist, but you can't do it by yourself. And you have to be committed to the team concept. And now let me get on bended knee in my hope as we wrap this up. I know we're all being cognizant of COVID and viruses and double vaccinations and all that kind of stuff, but one of the coolest events is AES in the fall in New York. And I'm hoping that you guys are at least thinking about it or hoping for it or planning it or maybe you can't talk about it, and we also want to be there. That's a whole other separate conversation, because it is one of the coolest things about AES is that it's small enough that you can feel people and get to them, but it's big enough that you're not missing anything. And that balance, as somebody who puts on live events, which you have attended and presented at, that is a definition. That's a goal to have to do that. You have to make fiscal decisions and planning decisions and all kinds of stuff to make that happen and to make the experience good for people. So, I'm cognizant of that, and I have much respect as a producer for that. But can I be optimistic about the fall?
Oh, I can give you some details. I mean, we have to plan way far in advance. We're thinking about 2022 right now.
Exactly right.
This year in October. So I'll start by saying, and I don't think this is just trying to be sort of Pollyannish about this. There are certain things that virtual events are good at, like reaching people around the world who can't afford to, don't want to, or don't have time to get on a plane. To go someplace. And so I think one of the things that we've learned is that a virtual event strategy will be a component of what we do. And this is not just you all know this better than anybody. You've been doing this for forever. So, and you reach people everywhere. So, so we will never lose sight of that fact. Having said that, we don't have a crystal ball. We are cut to the finish, to the punchline here. We will be in Las Vegas in October.
Oh.
So you don't even have to get on a plane. You can just
how
drive
cool
there
is
if
that?
you're in. So we will be there. We are going to, it'll be a relatively small component of a larger show, the virtual wrapper that will be built around it, which will probably happen the following week. Will be part of our October event, but we will have an in-person event. It is October 11th to 13th.
Oh, fantastic.
So that's pretty specific.
Yes, it is.
And we're busy curating the program right now, and we won't be able to represent, the entire breadth of what we do in the in-person event, but we're going to choose some highlights and hope to see you there.
Hope to be highlighted.
Yeah, and then we are very active in talking about our strategy for 2022.
Yes.
And I think you'll see us do some things that we had done previously, and also hopefully it will be an upgrade, and we'll be doing some new things too.
I'm so happy to hear it. At the expense of gushing as we wrap it up, can I just tell you that we get the advantage of meeting treasures in our business. We meet lots of folks. We meet wild guys and rock and rollers and incredible women and incredible diversity and all kinds of us. But there's certain kind of touch points and rocks in our business that you can always count on. And sir, you are first and foremost above them. I always enjoy every conversation. I always learn every single time. I understand why your students love you so much, and know that we at Pensado's Place feel exactly the same way.
Well, Herb, you're actually making me cry.
Oh, well, that's a good thing, because I do that a lot too.
No, I'm touched. I appreciate that. And I'm humble, I think, in the face of, it's just a great community. And there are so many people I love and respect and love collaborating with. I'm just really happy to be part of the community. And I do, I have to pinch myself that for this moment, I get to represent the audio engineering community in some way, shape, or form. But I'm just one in a series of people to do that. Yeah. I just want to add, we will have had at least our inaugural meeting of our BIPOC advisory board at iZotope. And I want to mention that both to support what you're talking about and also to lend our voice in inspiring others in the community to undertake this work. It's one of those things that it is important, and it will be important ongoing. And otherwise, just on behalf of everybody who makes great records and people who want to learn, just thank you for what you guys do and for making this time. And if there's anything that we can do, we'll look forward to seeing you in October. Let's just leave it at that.
You'll see us before that. I don't have a lot of shame in knocking on the door. So, Dave, why don't you take us home, buddy?
Okay. I love Jonathan. He's one of my heroes. And if you want to get ahead in this world and you want to be a mastering engineer, the pathway that I took was I didn't go to school for music, but I had idols, I had heroes, and so I learned from those guys. I learned from a guy in Atlanta, Ed C, that I talk about all the time. He took me under his wing and would critique my songs, and then have a friend or a buddy that you're growing with at the same pace and at the same time, and then I think you can have a pathway to the success that Jonathan had, or that I had, or that Herb had. It's not guaranteed, but it puts the odds in your favor. And so today, what I took from this was Jonathan and people of his ilk are accessible, and there's room for everybody in the audio business, every ethnicity, every color, every height, everything. Room for everybody. In fact, we need more people creating. Okay, guys, catch you next week or next time I see you, and be safe. Adios.